Good evening, everybody. I'm Bradley Graham, the co-owner of Politics and Prose, along with my wife, Lissa Muscatine, and on behalf of everybody at PNP, welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Before introducing James McBride, I'd just like to speak for a minute about the coronavirus crisis and how we've been adjusting here at Politics and Prose. As you may have noticed, we've got hand sanitizer dispensers out at the front door and the back door. We've been wiping surfaces in the store many times a day. This place is the cleanest I think it's ever been and will ever be. We've been encouraging people to order from Politics and Prose online. And today we began offering free shipping. So take advantage of that if you don't want to come into the store. And as you can see, for those of you who have come here before for events, as I know many of you have, we've increased the space between the seats here to try to be in compliance with what the CDC and others are suggesting. And we're also live streaming this event. We've just recently been able to figure out how to live stream, and we're planning to do more and more of that. So that you can sit at home and watch our events and while you order online from us. Anyway, for all the social distancing that's been recommended and that we certainly do agree with, I think it was Ibram Kendi who was quoted the other day as saying that one of the last things we should distance ourselves in times like this are books. So I'm especially encouraged to see all of you here and really grateful for your continued support in this difficult time, and especially grateful that James got in his car and drove here for this, not knowing how many of you would come out. So we often get asked of the hundreds and hundreds of events sponsored by the store each year, which have been our favorites. And I know it's probably not a great idea for relations with other authors to admit that we actually have any favorites. But just between you all and me this evening, the event that we had here for the Good Lord Bird 7 years ago was a real standout. James not only read from his book then, but he also came with his band, which played between his reading of excerpts, and this place just rocked. How many of you were here for that? Remember that? Okay, I see a few. There was one person who attended who said afterward, that wasn't an author talk, that was a spiritual experience. Well, there's no band this evening, but we couldn't be happier to have James back with us. He's actually been here several times before for his various works. When President Obama a few years ago bestowed on James the National Humanities Medal, the White House citation read, "For humanizing the complexities of discussing race in America through writings about his own uniquely American story and his works of fiction informed by our shared history, his moving stories of love display the character of the American family." His own story, of course, has several storylines. After attending Columbia Journalism School, he reported for a couple of years, then quit the news business to explore his roots and play music in Africa. Coming back to the United States, he returned to journalism for a bit before leaving again to work as a jazz musician full-time. But he also began working on his memoir, The Color of Water, which eventually became a bestseller, sustained bestseller, and widely declared a contemporary classic. Next, his debut novel, Miracle at St. Anna, was turned into a major motion picture. Then came Song Yet Sung, followed by The Good Lord Bird, of course, about the American revolutionary John Brown. which won the National Book Award for Fiction in 2013. And since then, James has come out with a biography of James Brown, Kill 'Em and Leave, and a collection of stories, 5 Carat Soul. His new book, Deacon, King Kong, marks his first novel since The Good Lord Bird, and readers will not be disappointed. The book, which centers around a shooting in the courtyard of a Brooklyn housing project, reflects James's signature rhythmic prose, his wit and dynamic storytelling, and his sheer passion. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming James McBride. Thank
you. You like me. You really like me. Thank you very much. It's so so good to see so many nice people here today. Really feel, just feel touched and moved that so many of you came out tonight. I'm sorry that I can't touch you and hold you and feel you up, whatever. I've been doing this a long time. When The Color of Water first came out, I was my ex-wife at the time wanted to live in a house that had 5 bathrooms. So that's 5 bathrooms. So you got one for the number 1, you got one for the number 2, and then you got 3 more for whatever you else got going. And so I had always needed money because I had to pay this gigantic, mortgage on this house with all these bathrooms, 5 bathrooms, 10 acres. So anytime there was some kind of racial problem, in the places, we've got to get a committee, call James McBride, the mulatto man. And so I'd come and I would say, let there be peace on earth, and, and let it begin with me. And so people would pay me to do this, and I had to do this. I did this for a long time, So the city of Louisville, Kentucky had a need for Let There Be Peace on Earth man to show up. So I showed up, and went. This is in 95, I guess, when the book first came out. So when I got off the plane, there were 3 guys, the 3 people standing there. So the first guy, and this was when you got off the plane. Remember you could get off a plane and the people were they were right there. So the first guy said, "Hi, I'm Father McGonagall, Father McGonagall or whatever. Nice to meet you. Welcome to Louisville." So I said, "Oh, thank you." And then then the next guy said, "Hi, I'm Rabbi, Stanowski. Welcome to Louisville." So I said, "Oh, nice." And behind them was a little short black woman, pretty little with curly hair, and she was eating a bag of potato chips. And the rabbi said, "And meet, Reverend Johnson from, such Baptist church." And she was like this, and she said, "Oh, Mr. McBride, I loved your book." And when she said book, a potato chip flew out her mouth. Like in Star Trek, when Scotty comes up to the captain and says, "Captain, we've got to," and the captain says, "No, she can't." I saw it coming, I saw, and it was twirling, and she was little, so, and that thing just, wow, right in my mouth. And everybody saw it. And so, what do you do with it? But I had to be a man, I just swallowed it, It wasn't too bad. It was kind of onion garlic. Not too bad. It wasn't too bad. It was. But anyway, so I've been funny about signings and stuff. I've been through a lot. I've been through an awful lot. When it comes to that. So I apologize that I didn't that I can't touch you and hold you and feel you in my arms, but I'm glad that you came out, and I know it's a frightening time for all of us. This book is really just a balm to just take your mind off your troubles. That's really what a book should do. Just take your mind off your troubles just for a short period of time. How this all happened was after I got divorced. I ended up, for those of you, for the 3 of you who haven't read The Color of Water, my mother was born. She was born and raised here in Virginia, and then she came to New York. She married my father, who was a black man, raised 12 kids, and sent us all to college and so forth, and took us to church. She converted to Christianity and took us to church, and we all went to church a lot. And so the church that she founded with my father is still there. And when she died, she was always concerned about the church. So I went to, the organist died at the church. The organist, Sister Lee, died at the church, and they were having a hard time finding someone to replace her. So I got involved, and I was calling because I play piano. I'm a saxophone player by trade, but I play piano. I play well enough to play like in church for funerals and all that kind of. So I mean, you don't really want to tell people in church you play piano because you'd be playing there all the time. But for my church, I'll do whatever they ask me to do. In any case, we were trying to find an organist, and we couldn't find it. Every time you ever any church, Episcopalian, Methodist, you can't find an organ player anymore. So I was calling these guys, and they say, "Oh, I can't do it. It's really I'm playing six church. I need $1,500, but I'll think about it." And then they end with this: "Have a blessed day." When they say that means forget all about it. Just forget it. That means they're jive. So I said to the church trustees, I said, why are we trying to find somebody to play at the church? We got 10,000 people in the projects here. Half of them are kids. Let's just raise our own. Let's just grow our own garden. So we started a program. We started 7 years ago, really, but we got it rolling 6 years ago. And now our oldest kid is 15. She just took her first organ lesson about a month ago, about 3 weeks ago. And we have a boy with her as well. He's 13 rather. So, and we have 25 kids in the program. Most of them are pianists. We have like 4 drummers and 4 bass players, because that's all you need in church. And you don't even need that. But as a result of my involvement with the church in the community where I was born, I started to see it differently than when I saw it as a kid. And I realized that there was so much magic and so much power in what the church represented back then. I'm not one of these people, by the way, Jesus is coming, and you don't, that saved that commercial for somebody else. But when I got divorced and I got involved with the church, it did help me a lot. And I lost everything, etc. I mean, I'm not going to, bother you with but I said to God, if you get me out of this, I will serve you the rest of my life. And the guy got me out of it, so I've been serving him since then, and it's been very good for me. But that doesn't mean that Christianity is better than Judaism or better than being a Muslim or any of that. I don't get caught up in none of that stupid nonsense. It doesn't mean nothing to me. I mean, the hypocrisy of the black church, we could be here for a long time talking about that. But I just take from it, it's easy to walk away and say it's no good, but it's better to stay and do the work. And, in most churches, if you have 10 people from church, take 8 of them. They just show up on Sunday with the nice clothes, and they just, Jesus. And when the song's over, out they go. The 9th person, maybe you'll see them on Monday. But the 10th person is the reason you go to church in the first place, because they do all the work. And my church has a couple people like that. So, in the course of, doing the work of the Lord, I came upon a bunch of different memories and a bunch of different people that I remember from my childhood who even still exist today. And that's how Deacon King Kong was born. Because, my godfather was a church deacon, and then he became like assistant minister, then he became associate minister. My church, everybody has a title, It doesn't matter what Of course, my godfather he worked at Long Island College. He was the janitor. I used to help him. Even after I got grown and moved, I used to help him because he was so old and he didn't want to quit his job, And but so at Long Island College Hospital, he was the janitor. But at New Brown Memorial Baptist Church, he was the preacher who talked about, when he was the only guy I knew who could sort of parallel the motor on his car with the redemption and resurrection of Jesus Christ, our Savior. And that's talent there. So anyway, this book begins. Basically it's about a deacon who just shoots the worst drug deal in the projects, and as a result of that, the ramifications of that shooting ping far into the neighborhood. So we meet all the people in the projects, and we meet all the Irish and Italian neighbors, and we meet this Brooklyn neighborhood that existed in 1969. So this is how the book begins. This chapter is entitled "Jesus is Cheese." Deacon Cuffy Lampkin of Five Ends Baptist Church became a walking dead man on a cloudy September afternoon in 1969. That's the day the old deacon, known as Sportcoat to his friends, marched out to the plaza of the Causeway Housing Projects in South Brooklyn, stuck an ancient .38 Colt in the face of a 19-year-old drug dealer named Deems Clemens, and pulled the trigger. There were a lot of theories floating around the projects as to why old Sportcoat, a wiry, laughing, brown-skinned man who had coughed, wheezed, hacked, guffawed, and drank his way through the cause houses for a good part of his 71 years, shot the most ruthless drug deal the projects had ever seen. He had no enemies. He had coached the project's baseball team for 14 years. His late wife, Hetty, had been the Christmas Club treasurer of his church. He was a peaceful man, beloved by all. So what happened? The morning after the shooting, the daily gathering of retired city workers, flophouse bums, bored housewives, and ex-convicts who congregated in the middle of the projects at the park bench near the flagpole to sip free coffee and salute old Gloria as it was raised to the sky, had all kinds of theories about why old Sportcoat did it. Sportcoat had rheumatic fever, declared Sister Veronica G., the president of the Cause Houses Tenant Association and wife of the minister at Five Ends Baptist, where Sportcoat had served for 15 years. She told the gathering that Sportcoat was planning to preach his first ever sermon that upcoming Friends and Family Day at Five Ends Baptist, titled, "Don't Eat the Dressing Without Confessing." She also threw in that the church's Christmas Club money was missing. But if Sportcoat took it, she said, it was on account of that fever. Sister T.J. Billings, known affectionately as Bum Bum, head usher at Five Ends, whose ex-husband was the only soul in that church's storied history to leave his wife for a man and live to tell about it. He moved to Alaska. Had her own theory. She said Sportcoat shot Deems because the mysterious ants had returned to Building 9. Sportcoat, she said grimly, is under an evil spell. Miss Izzy Cordero, vice president of the Puerto Rican Statehood Society of the Cause Houses, who had actually been standing just 30 feet away when Sportcoat pointed his ancient pea shooter at Deems' skull and cut loose, said the whole ruckus started because Sportcoat was blackmailed by a certain, quote, evil Spanish gangster, end quote, and she knew exactly who that gangster was and planned to tell the cops all about him. Of course, everybody knew she was talking about her Dominican ex-husband, Joaquin, who was the only honest numbers runner in the projects, and that she and Joaquin hated each other's guts, and each had worked to get the other arrested for the last 20 years. So there was that. Hot Sausage, the Causes House's janitor and Sportcoat's best friend, who raised the flag each morning and doled out free coffee care of the Cause House's senior center, told the gathering that Sportcoat shot Deems on account of the annual baseball game between the Cause Houses and their rival, the Watch Houses, being canceled 2 years before. Sportcoat, he said proudly, is the only umpire both teams allowed. But it was Dominic Lefleur, the Haitian cooking sensation who lived in Sportcoat's building, who best summed up everybody's feelings. Dominic had just returned from a 9-day visit to see his mother in Port-au-Prince, where he contracted and then passed around the usual strange third-world virus that floored half his building, sending residents crapping and puking and avoiding him for days, though the virus never seemed to affect him. Dominic saw the whole stupid travesty through his bathroom window as he was shaving. He walked into his kitchen, sat down to eat lunch with his teenage daughter, who was quaking with a temperature of 103, and said, I always knew old Sportcoat would do one great thing in life. And so that's how the book begins. And man, you guys are a sucker for a good story. My God, Jesus Christ. I got a bridge I want to sell you. But anyway, essentially, Sportcoat doesn't kill the guy. He wounds him, and then that sets off a chain reaction because he's a drug dealer. He's at the bottom end of a very powerful drug cartel, and they're missing this money, and they want to straighten out this guy because they know that this guy, the guy who shot their man, has got to be punished. So they send someone after Sportcoat, and the local Italian mobsters get involved, and the local Irish cop gets involved. So you see the connective tissue of the community growing as the book evolves. And there's an piece of art business that takes place in the middle of the book to kind of buoy up the center of the story, and that's it. I wrote this book because I wanted to write a book that that I wanted to read to the end. And I also, the stereotypes of the black church are just so bad. I mean, every time I see one of these Tyler Perry movies, they always show black women as like, they're big and fat, they got a wig, and they're going, you ain't got no, why don't you just, I can't stand it. It's not even funny. You know what I mean? It's just so lame, and they just work it. He just works it till it's all. But the truth is that the church really is funny. And the black women who work there who are involved are really funny, but they're deep and they're profound. They see a lot. Women, their hearts are full of mysterious secrets that most of them can never tell to other people. And most women in church, whatever color their church is, they have to store all those secrets. And you got Sunday morning or Saturday night, whenever you go, that's when the secrets, they come out your heart. God swoops them up, takes them to heaven wherever he's living, and then you pack the rest, and then you just keep on going. But so you unpack a little bit. If you just unpack a little bit as a writer, you find that it just pours out. So there's a love story that happens in the middle of this. And I've actually felt like redeemed when people say to me, this is the love thing that happens in the middle of the book is really good, because I've never written an effective love scene, professionally or personally, for God. I just think it's incredible. I mean, it's just like, it just really, I could feel these two people falling in love, and that wasn't supposed to happen. I mean, that was just, it's just sometimes it's, it's in the air, and, you just, so anyway, I got 5 more minutes of talking, and then I'm going to open the floor to questions, because they here at Politics and Prose, by the way, I think this was the first store I ever gave my reading. I ever gave a reading at here in D.C. In fact, the first reading I ever went to, I gave it. I had never been to a reading before, and the lady had to tell me what to do. And she said, "Okay, first you read, and then you just read a little bit, not a lot, and then but of course I didn't pay no attention, so I was just I was like, and my mom, an hour later, when I was in Chicago, I went on my first book tour. Nobody knew, they didn't know. When The Color of Water came out, it came out with every other mixed race book that just said, I'm a tragic mulatto, as lonely as can be. Don't cry, mulatto. I'll keep you company. Hey, fellow mulatto, we'll three be a cry. All the mulattoes together, sing real loud. And it was all sad stuff. So, by the way, that was from an Acme commercial many years ago when I was a kid. I'm a lonely pimple, as lonely I can be. Does anyone remember that? Don't cry, pimple, I'll keep you company. Hey, fellow pimple, we'll three be a crowd. All together, pimple, sing real loud. And then they go, na 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 na. It just occurred to me, I've just been struck by my new book. But anyway, when The Color of Water came out, it came out with, I'm a Tragic Mulatto Part 1 and Divided Soul and, chicken and matzo balls. What should I, gefilte fish versus Kentucky Fried. It was just sort of like, so, why was I telling you this story? I can't remember now.
You're telling us about your first reading.
Oh, so I was, thank you, dear. I appreciate that. Well, this is why I go to a black church, see. Because the black woman say, look, you're acting a fool now. I'm going to straighten you out, okay? It's all right. You're good. You're fine. Now, you can continue, but just know that you're being an idiot. That's okay. But, so, when I got to Chicago, when The Color of Water came out, I got to Chicago. There were two people there in the audience. It was rain and snow, icy, Chicago, and nobody. It was just two women sitting together, a black woman and a white woman. And, of course, when I was doing my readings in those days, I'd go like, my mom, life was hard. We just, and then I can't believe it was even worse. And so I was just reading along, and both of them fell asleep. But the black woman just went down like, but the white woman did this. She was like, And I really appreciate that she at least tried, to be part of my story. But in any case, that's my little sob story, and I'm sticking to it. The book took off. It became a bestseller, and wow. The next thing you know, I wrote another and another and another, and so I see some friends here. I've made a lot of friends along the way, and I'm so happy you came. So why don't we just open the floor to any questions, and then we can, wrap this up at 8, and everybody can get home and get a good night's sleep, because you want your resistance to be up. You want your resistance to be up. You want to live long enough to see old Orange Head. Right? We want to live long enough to see that. So, in my church, they've never in the 3 years that the old Orange Head's been, not once has he been mentioned in my church, ever. And I played for many services, funerals, not once. But I think some of them prayers about the Lord bringing, you can't, see, one tweet, one tweet can suck. Yeah, well, take a breath. How's that? Look, God's going to sing you. He's going to send you one thing, and you can't even adjourn. Oh, man. So I know that somebody is praying somewhere. It wasn't me, though. I just want to let you know. I had nothing to do with that. In any case, any questions you have? Yes, Will Hager.
Come to the microphone.
Okay.
Where did you get the idea for a story about an older African-American killing a gangster?
Okay.
And I can think of at least one movie where that happened, but...
Well, that's a good question. I like these old characters, the old black men who, do so. I've known many in my life, and I'm becoming one myself. So I've always admired that. And of course, all of us know, have an uncle or a cousin or somebody who, got drunk at 20 and died at 80, And then the whole notion of him shooting the drug dealer, I think is really just because the frustration that so many people in these drug-addled communities feel. They want to shoot these guys. They know they can't, And this book takes place before crack. Crack, as you probably know, those of you who live in D.C. and Baltimore, I see some Baltimoreans and some D.C. people here. Crack really destroyed a lot of these. It destroyed Baltimore. It destroyed a lot of D.C. Destroyed these families, and this was before crack. So there was kind of an innocence to that period. So that's why I did it. Yes, Will Haygood.
Hey man, how you doing?
Good.
Good. And I'd like you to tell us how the movie experience has been with Ethan Hawke.
Okay.
In The Good Lord Bird.
All right.
And also, I need your contact again, so can you privately leave it with the owner?
Sure,
I'm
yeah,
working
yeah.
on the book. Okay.
Will Hagood's an old friend. Will Haygood is one of the premier scribblers in this area, and he also happens to be a personal friend. He's one of the few guys I know who had his books optioned and so forth. He wants to know what happened with The Good Lord Bird, which became a film, it became a TV series that Ethan Hawke did. It was great, man. It really worked out. Well, let me just say this. I don't know why I feel so happy about it. It's just, creatively, it was just a wonderful, no. No, Ethan Hawke did a great job with it. He wrote the script. Him and his wife wrote the script themselves. They had like a 250 or 270-page script, and then it fell into the lap of a showrunner named Mark Richard that Ethan came up with. Now, Mark Richard is a novelist and a short story writer who lives in Virginia. He's a Southerner, and he wrote a good book called Ice at the Bottom of the World. He was a writer at Esquire magazine, and he did a lot of. He's just a guy who that most people haven't paid attention to in the last 10 years. But he did this thing called Hell on Wheels. He was showrunner and producer of that. And so he brought that expertise and Wild West expertise and knowledge of that era to this project. And he did a good job. He hired 5 or 6 screenwriters who were young, who were good, and he coached them along. And they did a good job. I didn't have anything to do with it. I just visited the set a couple times, And when I visited the set, they'd say, "The writer's here. The writer's here," And everybody would be really nice, and Interesting. It was in Virginia. They filmed it in Virginia, so it's coming out in September. It's like a 7-part series. And Ethan did a wonderful job. No kidding. He really understood. He did a lot of research. Ethan Hawke is a writer himself, and he's a very talented. He's a Shakespearean actor. He's at that level. So he brought a lot of actors who are not necessarily famous, but all of them were really good. But Daveed Diggs is in it. Daveed Diggs plays. He plays Frederick Douglass. Yeah, his name is Daveed. Don't call him David. Daveed. It's like you should call me Jamis. Okay. No, Daveed. Jamis. I like that. Jamis. Any next question? No other questions? Okay.
Venus. Can I avoid the mic if I just say Venus? How'd she enter into the story?
Venus. Oh, the Venus of Willendorf. Okay. Yeah, this is.
And I know that. I know, so I had to go to Wikipedia and look it up. It's like, oh yeah. But then I want to know if it was something else.
Are you retired? Did you retire yet?
Yes, a couple times.
Okay. All right. This is my old friend Craig from. All right. Well, I had to find something in the middle of the book to give it some buoyancy because there's an important character in the middle of the book named the Elephant, Thomas Elefante, who's an Italian, kind of an Italian smuggler who lives in the neighborhood, and I had to find something that was the size of it was the issue. Now, in real life, in Boston in 1991 and 1992, they stole. Do you remember this? There was a big robbery of an art museum in Boston, and they sold the Rembrandts. What was it called? Yeah. Okay. The Gardner.
Isabella Stewart Gardner.
Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Right. No, they didn't recently find anything, but there was always a rumor. Somewhere I heard this, that, well, here's my church is like in the middle of like kind of an industrial zone. Right on the next block is a storage facility. And there's a rumor that the Gardner Museum stuffs is in that storage facility. And it has a big, tall tower right on top of it. So every time I drive to church or get off the subway, I'd see that tower. I said, man, if I could get in that store, I might find that it's over. If I could find, it's over, So it was always in my mind that if I were hiding something, I would come to my neighborhood in Red Hook in Brooklyn and hide it there because nobody comes to that part of the projects. So that's really started the whole business of that. I needed something that gave this Italian character some drive other than the whole business of I'm not going to be selling drugs like the rest of the mobsters in the area. And also I needed something that would show his humanity and give him a full dimension and also lock him in to the mystery that happens, that unfolds later on in the story with the old woman and the church and so forth. But I had to find a piece of art that was small. So I was talking to a sculptor friend of mine. I was looking around, I couldn't find anything. I talked to a sculptor friend of mine, and I said, I really need something that's small. And he's the one that said, well, you want something that's small, the Venus of Willendorf. And then I saw a picture of it, and I said, yeah, this will do. So that's how it happened.
You talked about women earlier, and that theme of the importance of women in the background is consistent. I guess I was wondering how intentional maybe we shouldn't expose all that.
No, I mean, look, if they're going to buy it, they ain't got to buy my book. You ain't got to buy it. You came out here for, no, sometimes it falls into place, it just falls into place. The whole business of using Venus, the name is so attractive, just the whole business of love. And, as I moved into the middle of the book, I realized that the love story in the middle of this book is important. And it kind of just sprinkled it's like getting a blessing, It's just a little bit of that water sprinkled onto that. That would be my guess on it. Yes, sir.
What inspired you to be a writer, and was there any writers who you really took to basically, who said, I want to be like them?
What inspired me to be a writer? I'm not sure. No. It just was really happened. I started out as a musician, I ended up I went to Columbia. I went to Oberlin. I went to Columbia after Oberlin because I got into social change. Oberlin was a great school. I know people like to pick on it all the time now because it's a great. Fox News always they find some stupid bullshit, and it happens at Oberlin. Some kid complains about his teriyaki steak or something. He didn't get Japanese food, and he wanted and they just pick on. But Oberlin's a great school. First school to admit women. First college to admit women. First white college to admit blacks. So it did a lot for me, and at the end of my Oberlin career, my Oberlin time, I went to Columbia to get a master's in journalism because I got into social change, and I didn't do much social changing, but I did learn how to write as a journalist, and I ended up at these different newspapers, and then I did that for 9 years, and then I just quit. I was at the Washington Post. That was my last job. I was in the style section. So I've had some friends here who I've trained with, Peter Floyd, people I've trained with that were at the Washington Post or whatever. And I quit, and I moved to New York, and I played music for 9 years. Played jazz, And then during that time, I wrote The Color of Water. And then after I wrote The Color of Water, it just seemed natural to just write another one. I didn't really like being a songwriter and a composer. Because you're always coming to somebody and say, I got a song for your thing. And then you hear this stuff. Like I did one of these musicals in Japan. I ended up writing the book because the book was terrible. I said, why don't you do that? And then I ended up writing the book and the music. But I only got paid to do the music. So I said, this ain't working. So, I just ended up writing, but it just seems to be easier for me to. The other thing is when you write, I'm very creative, and I just want that. Journalism was never creative enough for me. Really, it just was not. And I was at the most creative nonfiction writing place in the country, probably in the world in terms of newspapers at the style section, because there was some really good writers there. But it just wasn't creative enough. And the other thing was that, going back to what the question the guy asked, when you stay in journalism too long, the cynicism becomes part of and when you stay in politics and journalism, that is the death of your creativity, because you start becoming cynical. And cynicism is the death of the creative spirit. So I wasn't going to make it here, because you say stuff here, you say like when I wrote Miracle of St. Anna. Okay, well 3 people read it, and I have 8 brothers. I have 11 brothers and sisters, and that's I'll tell you right there that. And I remember I was in California, and I was publicizing the book, and this guy came to me and said, "Why did you write this book?" I said, "This is a book about a white Italian boy who meets a black soldier, and they become friends." And he said, "Why'd you write this book? Huck Finn's been written already." And I said, "Well, it doesn't matter. I haven't done it." Well, Spike Lee read the book, and he made a movie from it, and I think it's one of the best movies that Spike has ever done. Most people haven't seen it, but it's a very good movie about World War II. It really is one of the best pieces he's ever done, I think, and I'm very proud of it. So what writing taught me was that failure is important, and I like that lesson, and it's helped me. It's humbled me. It's kept me close to the, to the things that are important. So I didn't really grow up wanting to be a writer. It just happened. Writing, you don't choose writing. Writing chooses you. That's how it works, in my opinion. But now, I'm not really sure now, because I don't really know. Sometimes I don't really know. Look, if you think you know, you probably don't. All right, and next question? Yes?
So my question is, how do you kind of deal with like writer's blocks or feelings of like imposter syndrome, especially after your bestseller? Like, did you have any feelings of like intimidation after, like, oh, can my next book top the next one, or was this just more so just writing just in despite of everything else?
Well, I didn't really think about that too much. You have to remember, when I wrote The Good Lord Bird, I was in the middle of just a really, really horrible, expensive, just crushing divorce. So it was just about doing the next thing. I never thought about, I can't say I never, I just don't think about beyond what the story is. Imposter syndrome, yeah. In terms of writer's block, I don't think there's such thing as writer's block. If you get stuck, it's usually because you haven't researched enough. It's usually because your character runs out of gas because you don't have enough ammo. Pardon the warlike, the violent puns. You don't have enough juice. You haven't put in enough ingredients to make the flour strong. So you have to go back and find the stuff and then the characters will. Because it's essentially what happens is you open the drawer, and these characters pop out. You open the drawer and you go abracadabra, and you hope the character. Now sometimes you go abracadabra, nothing happens. So you get a cup of coffee and smoke a cigarette, then maybe the abracadabra. And then sometimes you do that all week long. But you do it at the same time so that should the guy or the gal decide to jump out, you're right there ready for him. So consistency and ability to, just forget your failures is really important. Next question.
Yes, speaking of research, song not sung. I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a lot from all your books, but from that one, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know, and you must have dug deep on the research. If there's anything you can share about what that was like.
I spent a lot of time on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. I'm proud to say I was a one Maryland, one book choice. Those of you, that's right. You're looking at the former one Maryland, one book. She's incognito here. She's not going to be. But I spent a lot of time learning about the Watermen on the Eastern Shore. I did not realize until I wrote that book that the Watermen on Maryland's Eastern Shore had as much to do with the Underground Railroad as any group, including the Quakers. And the Watermen were not all black, by the way. I mean, you saw the Harriet Tubman movie, the Watermen, you see, the sailors are black. But in real life, the Watermen on the Eastern Shore Maryland people, they're very... I spent a lot of time on the Eastern Shore. I can tell you, I don't know anything about Eastern Shore Maryland. Eastern Shore Watermen, because they are very complicated people. But they're very religious. And during that period, especially as we moved toward the Civil War, the beginning of the Civil War, John Brown time, 1861, the 1850s, there was a preacher named Adam Wallace who used to go around. I forgot this guy's name. I think Adam Wallace wrote the book. There was a preacher who used to go around to the different islands on the Eastern Shore and preach against slavery. And he began to roust up a lot of, and that was the chain that Harriet Tubman used to get the Underground Railroad going. Most people don't know that. The Underground Railroad, most of it in this area was on the water until you got to Philly, until you got to Seaford, Delaware, that area. And that was all Watermen who were religiously against slavery. You can't tell a Waterman what to do. They've been on that Chesapeake Bay a long time, and they oftentimes sailing with black people who are their co-sailors. And when you're in the middle of Chesapeake Bay and that wind's howling and that boat's tipping, there ain't no white or no black. And that's really what really powered the Underground Railroad, the natural force of the water of the Chesapeake that made its way into the soul of these white men and women who, with these free black and sometimes enslaved black people who were running these boats. And that's how Harriet Tubman worked. So, yeah, I mean, it was fascinating to learn that information. And, of course, that's another book that 8 people read. Now I got no. I mean I haven't had. Look, you can't hit a home run every time. That book was critically acclaimed, and I'm so proud of it. It's so far ahead of its time. And I was so proud that I was treated so well in Maryland by the one book, the Maryland Humanities Council. It meant a lot to me. I'm very lucky. I'm just a lucky. What's the song? I'm a lucky so and so. Yeah. We still got another 10. 15 minutes. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm curious about your work with the kids in the church, especially if it's still the sort of same neighborhood. And is music a vehicle to sort of get involved more with the kids? And what are their prospects? Are they living in the project still?
Yeah. I mean, it's not that big a deal. What happened was, I just went back to the most. So I'm just working from my strength. Like I know that area, and I just never felt. I'm not kidding you. When I asked God to help me out, he did. So I have to keep my word. One of the things that's really nice about having faith, and there are lots of things that ain't nice, but one of the nice things about having faith is it gives you a wall to push against, and it gives you purpose, and it gives you the ability to forgive people for whatever stupidness they might have. So I deal with a lot of parents who, really don't know what they don't read my book. They are not interested. They're not interested in what I do professionally. But I have so much respect for them because they can get up in the morning on a Saturday and get their kid out of bed. And we give the kids pianos. We give them pianos. Any instrument they need, we give them except drums. We can't do that. And it's just great to watch them grow. I wish that more people who grew up like I did would return to their neighborhoods, because if they did, they would just get so much out of it. I'm sorry. The reason why I'm doing it now is because I used to say, I can't wait till I get old. When I get old, I'm going to go back to Red Hook. I'm going to help out. And I realized that there ain't no such thing as tomorrow's not promised. You wait until there's no waiting. You just do it now. You just do it now, today. That's it. Because pretty soon it's all over. So, yeah, they have a lot of problems. I think the main problem I have with the kids is this whole business of these cell phones. They can't focus. Even the most intelligent kid can't focus. The kids who focus the best, they all come from the projects. We have 6 Chinese kids in our program because, the Chinese live in the projects too in New York. Like New York has 3 Chinatowns. One's 2 in Brooklyn and one's in Queens, one's in Brooklyn, one's in Manhattan. Chinese people can't afford to live there anymore. It's changed. It's just like DC, you can't. So, and 2 of those kids, 4 of them, they're middling. They're all right. But 2 of them are really good. And you know why? Because they don't have a cell phone. And they practice. And then we got, like I told you about the girl who's 15. She's Hispanic or Latinx or whatever. You have to be careful. Latinx. I mean, what the hell? I mean, you can't make a mistake and say, I'm sorry. You say the wrong thing, man. It's over. Latinx. I mean, come on. I don't care what you are. I really don't care. It don't matter. We call them Spanish. But look, I mean, anyway, she's Hispanic. She's very smart. She's very good. She goes to LaGuardia School of Performing Arts, and she's been through a lot. Her mother used to bring her. In the summer, she used to come. She came one summer. They lost their apartment, and she would bring her kids, pushing their stuff in a shopping cart. And her kid is the best kid in our whole program. And I sent her to the Lincoln Center program. The Lincoln Center has this music program, with they have, so you can say you're playing with the Lincoln Center middle school program. I kept her in there for 1 year, and I took her out because all the kids got in that program all get private lessons. They all, they all sound the same. They're not really playing from here. They're just, and so I said to the guy running, I said, how do you call this a program in the city, in New York, when all the kids are, getting private lessons? These kids who are poor, jazz is not for rich kids. I mean, jazz has become like classical music. It's for rich people. It's for rich kids. So you're telling me this is my culture that I'm doing in my church that created part of this culture, the tree from which you are plucking the apple. And I'm sending my little student over to you, and you give her a little bit of money because she doesn't have the $1,200 or $12, whatever it is you want. And then you put her in there, and then when I question you about how come you don't have any more black and Hispanic kids, you get mad, and you say they're not good enough. Oh, really? I mean, so I just said, take her out of there. Now, my kids, there's a private school down the street from our church. It costs $40,000 a year to get in there. I'm not kidding. It's like a prison. It's all enclosed. The playground is up top, so you don't even see those kids. But I'm willing to bet, I would bet real money that my kids can play as good as any of those kids there. And it's not because of anything I do. It's because of the parents. Because the parents make them practice. Not all my kids. I'd say 50% of them can play better than any of those kids that are their age. So my 15-year-old and this boy who's 13 that just starting their organ, they can really play. And the reason why they can really play is not just because they have the technical things we give them. It's because they know they're in a place where they're loved and respected. A child knows when you love and respect them. They know that. And so this is what I'm getting. So who's getting paid? This is what I get.
Hi. How do you reconcile your deep personal faith with some of the problems that you've seen over your life, and then also some of the institutionalized issues that you talked about and alluded to in your own religion and other religions?
That's a good question. I simply just ignore what I know. I'm like a Trump voter. I just ignore what I feel like ignoring. That's all. Yeah, it's all right. He's all right. It's just locker room talk. I just ignore what I feel like ignoring. And look, you have to, like in my community, there's not much left in the black community, really. There was a time when, when the church really, I have to be careful because I don't want to insult people, but there was a time when the African American church really was a bedrock of black consciousness and thought and education and togetherness. That period is gone, and you can't bring that back. But there was some good things about it that can still be found. And I think you can say that about just about any religion. I mean, Jews in America now, Judaic life, and before you get all funny about it, just remember, I'm just talking, and you don't have to agree with me, so no editorials, please. But Judaic life now is not what it was when I was a boy. It's not. Jewish people are just not as they don't have the same. They don't have the same. Doesn't have the same kind of muscle that it had when I was a boy. The muscle's different, and it's the same thing with black religious life. I choose to find the good things in it to help me get out of bed, because I know that as a grown man, I remember this building. There was this little church. There was always good things that happened. These memories were in my mind, and so I know when these kids come to church, they don't necessarily have to find Jesus. I don't really care, but I know they'll remember this building as a place of refuge and a place of kindness, where good things happened, and somehow knowing that makes you strong. I remember when I was talking about this with my friend David. He'd talk about Hebrew school, and he'd go to Hebrew school. It wasn't so much that what he was learning in terms of religion, it was the love and the respect for the goodness of that element, of that religious life that made him strong and that he calls on. That's really important for a kid, and that's why I do it. Does that answer your question? All right. You have a question?
I think you have a question? Well, my question is really quick.
All right.
I don't know how long you're in Washington, but hearing you talk about the church and about music, there's a production of James Baldwin's The Amen Corner right now at the Shakespeare Theater. And if you're here long enough to see it, I would be really interested in what you think of it.
Well, I mean, I would love to see it, but I'm driving home I'm a single father. So as soon as we leave here, as soon as the gavel sounds, I start driving right back home, because I have a 18-year-old. I don't know what he's doing right now. He's smoking crack. He'll be free in the fall when he goes to college, and then I can have my life back. But I've been a single dad for the last 5 years, and that's the real work there. You had a question in the back there?
So I read The Color of Water. My territory is sort of from Maryland to Philly.
Right.
And I work with defense attorneys. And I can send books when they're in paperback to my defendants who are now
Guests of the state?
Of various incarceration facilities. So The Color of Water, when I read it, I realized how much and how often these young men just didn't get where it was that they fit in to the grand scheme of things, and how things had just strayed away. And that you had a better outcome.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure what the question is, but everybody has identity issues. The problem is that with young men now, particularly young men of color, but not always necessarily young men of color, there's not a lot of room to make a mistake. I was just in Charlottesville's airport, in Charlottesville, when I was flying up to Philly yesterday. and like nobody was flying. It was really, there were like maybe 10 people in the whole airport. And there were probably like 30 cops. I mean, there's police everywhere. We live like in a military state. There's cops all over the place. I mean, because, they're selling fear. Fear is for sale. No, fear is not for sale. Fear is the mechanism that they use to make us scared of each other. And it used to be, the black guy was going to rob you, rape a white woman, and kick your teeth out and take your money and all this. Now they don't do it. Now it's the brown people, the Mexicans. They're coming in caravans. It's just disgraceful. I was reading the White Devil in White City. What's his name? Eric Larson's book about Chicago. He's such a good writer, and he wrote this next book is about Winston Churchill. And I thought it was just great. I mean, he's just such a good writer. But this is my problem not with Eric Larson, okay, because I like him. but I have to be honest. My sensibility is that when I went to Germany as a younger man, when I first stepped off the plane, I said to myself, "Oh my God, I'm in a Jewish cemetery." I could just feel it. That was just me. I said, well, so I didn't say anything. I just walked around, but I knew where I was. Now, when I read his book about, and I haven't finished it yet, about Winston Churchill, there's not like one line about what the moral element involved here in this war is all about. I mean, I just not want a single line. I mean, so my sense of reality is just different than everybody else's, I guess. So I guess I say that to say we are living in a time where we have our attention has been diverted from the important things, because we can't look back at Germany now and say, how dare you? How dare you? How dare you say you didn't know? Of course we do know. We know what's happening here. And how dare, when my point is that our silence makes us complicit in what is happening in this country. That's just the bottom line. If you're about community building and helping people and standing up for the right thing, then me and you, we're good. But if you ain't, I ain't interested in what you got to say. I don't care what your instrument is. I don't care how many movies you've done, how many books you've written. So, I really don't care, because I'm not angry, but I don't want to die being someone who just sat there and said, if your life don't count for something, my mother used to say, if you don't count for something, you don't count for nothing. And this is the time for us to be counted. Now, we're all on the clock now. All of us are going to get sick some kind of way with this, what's going on. Now, where do you want to be counted? Because there's an election coming up. There's a lot of work to do. And some of us are going to live to see it, and some of us ain't. God willing, I'll be there to see it. But if I ain't, you know where I stand, and you know where I stood. Because it's time for us to figure out where we belong. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about Mr. Trump, because when you say negative things about someone, it don't help. But there ain't nothing wrong with saying the truth. And you don't have to edit my comments out about, what's his name, Salman Rushdie. He's a good guy. I don't care. What I really care about is, where do you stand now with what's going on in this country right now? Because that's important. That's the most important thing. And that's why you came out here tonight and risked your skins. Because you want to hear some truth. You want to feel better. And I hope you do. So thank you for coming out. Thank you for supporting me and this bookstore. And I'll see you next time.